Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clubs. I have just a couple of announcements, and then we'll get into today's topic. The first thing is we're getting toward the end of the year where there are fewer and fewer things going on, but we have two big things coming up that I think you might be interested in. One is the mini professional development course, and the person who's going to take this is somebody who's saying, I'm in institutional healthcare of some sort. I want out. I want something else to do. I've always wanted to have my own practice or my own business, but I don't know how that works. I'm not involved in healthcare, but I'd like to be doing something to help people with their health. Those are the types of people. And it's going to be a 3-class series, December 1st, 8th, and 15th. We'll record it. It'll be done via Zoom. And I'm going to cover everything from how to do your own research to how you deal with the complicated client who shows up with a lot of health issues. That's what we see mostly these days. And on into business training. How do you start, develop, and operate a business on your own that's the healthcare business, right? So, and here the tuition's $249. We'll apply it to another professional development course if you choose to continue your education with us. But I promise if you take this course, you'll walk away with plenty of information. You won't need any, I mean, you'll need more. You always need more information. I'm still learning, I'm still researching, but you'll have enough to really get yourself started. Another thing, the last Optimal Health and Life with Pam weekend, it's part 2. And that's taking place the first weekend in December. Another Zoom session. It's virtual, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. And we're going to cover things like how to increase your metabolism and energy levels, better immune function, cognitive health, and aging. Aging is you may already be doing a lot of the right things, but what does it take to live really well and independently until you're 100 years old? Digestion and healthy skin, hair, and nails, and mental and psychological health, and more on developing healthy habits. I mean, a lot of people know what to do, but how do you make this into like the default choice, right? That is the 4th and 5th of December. So if you're interested in these things, send me an email. We'll get back to you with more information and details. And don't forget about our fabulous food products, which I eat every day, starting with our smoothie in the morning. Smoothie, flax, tea, yeast, plant milk, bananas, and frozen fruit. I've been having it every single day. All of those things, the tea, flax, yeast, and smoothie mix, we sell at our store. We can ship it any place in the world. And I just don't function as well as when I have my standard breakfast, which I also have with toast. And then that's enough food to last for a while. All right, so let's get into today's topic, which is expensive drugs versus diet and lifestyle change. I think you know what my answer is going to be, but I'll share what I think is some pretty shocking information with you. Drugs are becoming more expensive. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but there are some cancer treatments that cost over $400,000 a year. There are almost no cancer drugs being approved right now that cost less than $100,000. And unfortunately, people often think that expensive means best option. And the drug companies are pretty good at promoting this idea. They're the best marketers in the world, and they use excellent and expensive advertising programs through which they convince Americans that drugs are really expensive to develop, even though they do it with federal money sometimes, and they're well worth the price when a breakthrough occurs, but that would be premised on the idea that an actual breakthrough does occur. Well, not so much. Biologic drugs, for example, are some of the most expensive, costing up to 22 times more than comparable conventional drugs that sometimes even work better. The biologics are made from components of blood and cells and genes and recombinant proteins. And so a good example, monoclonal antibodies are examples of biologics. In 2021, US sales of biologics totaled over $366 billion, generating profit margins as much as high as 40% for drug companies. These are some of the most profitable drugs on the market. One of the biggest markets for biologic drugs is autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, plaque psoriasis, and ankylosing spondylitis. Some of the better known drugs in the class include Humira, Enbrel, and Remicade. And if you watch television, you probably have seen ads for all 3 of these. They're delivered via infusion. They're mixtures of human and animal cells, which many people don't realize. So Humira and Enbrel are made from genetically modified Chinese hamster ovary cells, and Remicade is made from genetically engineered humanized mouse cells. Now, the drugs are designed to weaken the immune system because autoimmune diseases are an immune system run amok, essentially. And according to Humira's prescribing information, those who take it because it weakens the immune system are at, quote, increased risk for developing serious infections that may lead to hospitalizations or death. And also reported infections include active tuberculosis, fungal infections, and there's a whole list of those, candidiasis, pneumocystitis. The list goes on. I mean, if people read this before they decided what they were going to do, and I'll get to the choices in a minute here, I think far fewer people would take the drug. Now, here's what's really incredible. The cost of Humira is over $9,000 a month. That's more than the average household income in the United States. Since 2015, it's been the greatest revenue producing drug in the US every year. What's even worse is that the drug is not superior to cheaper drugs that cost only $105 per month. And by the way, we're one of the few countries in the world that allows a drug to be approved when it's tested against a placebo. And you might think, well, isn't that what it's all about? Actually, the drug should be tested against other commonly used effective drugs that are often cheaper. For example, in this case, to see if it's really worth, all this money, $9,000+ per month versus $105 a month. Are people really getting what they pay for? But there's no such requirement. So first of all, the way that this drug becomes a bestseller is that it's not tested against another cheaper drug that might be very effective too. And then the second thing, as I mentioned before, the drug companies are just masters at marketing. So I'll tell you what happened here. It's kind of an interesting story, actually. Abbott Labs was the developer of Humira. And in the beginning, they basically said they were going to give the drug free to Medicare patients until the government agreed to pay for it. Well, of course, as you might imagine, it wasn't very long before it was added to the approved drug list for Medicare reimbursement. Abbott then hired a public relations agency and a large advertising firm to promote the drug. Again, going back to what I said earlier, if you watch TV, you've seen an ad for Humira. And if you watch TV for an hour, you probably saw ads for 4 other drugs too. Well, anyway, at the same time that they were ramping up the promotion, they spun off a new company called AbbVie and moved the drug to ownership by the new company. And this is becoming a really clever strategy by drug companies to avoid liability. So what they basically do is set up a subsidiary, they give the drug to the subsidiary. If there are hundreds or thousands of lawsuits, then the subsidiary becomes liable and the parent company never gets put out of business. That happened with Pfizer. They're the masters of this strategy. And when they paid the biggest criminal fine in history, and a lot of people were asking why weren't they put out of business, it was because it was a subsidiary that actually paid the fine. And because Pfizer was considered too big to fail, that's a term you usually hear applied to banks, but it actually applies to drug companies too. So anyway, back to the AbbVie/Abbott's marketing plan. AbbVie gave $2 million in grants to the American Academy of Dermatology, which launched something called a Nurse Ambassador Program. The nurses were paid to go to the homes of Humira patients and to tell them all the wonders of Humira and downplay any increased risk of cancer or serious infections that would be side effects of the drug. Doctors were given kickbacks in the form of cash and meals and gifts and patient referrals. And according to one court document, this program reached 179,000 patients. What makes this all despicable, in addition to the obvious, which is what I just told you, is that diet and lifestyle changes can often slow or stop the progression or even reverse autoimmune diseases. And at the very least, a health promoting diet that lowers inflammation levels and exercise and weight loss and treating comorbidities that might be contributing to the AID, or drugs that the person is taking that might be contributing to the autoimmune disease, that these should all be considered first. And last but not least, this is something that John Abramson wrote about in his book, Sickening. He feels very strongly that diet and lifestyle, a diet and lifestyle group should be included in clinical trials for drugs to make sure that it's not possible for the person to get well with diet and lifestyle change, which would negate the need for the drug. Unfortunately, that's almost impossible to do with the drug companies controlling the clinical trials, not just paying for them, but also study design, who conducts the study. They never turn over the raw data to the FDA, and there's a whole lot of other misbehavior besides just pricing these things at levels that are in the stratosphere, and they're not any better than older, cheaper drugs. So anyway, the bottom line is that, if these drugs were really the only solution, you'd almost justify the price, but they're not. Better, cheaper solutions are available. And you know what's the cheapest solution of all? Taking better care of yourself. It is, you have to eat anyway, and your grocery bill's cheaper when you eat well. I'm here to tell you, because I used to eat terribly and now I eat well and I spend less on food. Exercise doesn't have to be expensive. You can go out and walk, okay, if that's all you can do economically. Drinking water, very inexpensive. Everything is inexpensive from a diet and lifestyle perspective compared to seeing doctors all the time and taking these ridiculously expensive drugs, almost all of which result in copays for the consumer. So much for the drugs. They're not always better, and sometimes even worse than alternatives. And I've always felt strongly that you exhaust your attempts to get well before you sign up for a lifetime of being drugged, which only involves drugging away the symptoms, not resolving the underlying cause of your problem. All right, that's it for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy learning from what I have to say, and I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news.